Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be my fall TBR. I have over 30 books on this list, I think, which is ambitious, but fun to talk about anyway, right? I'm also going to give some recommendations for some of my favorite books that give off sort of fall vibes. There's nothing more I have to say to intro this. Lots of books to talk about, so let's just get into the video. Alright, let's start just quickly with my recommendations for fall. I'm gonna go through the ones that I don't have with me first. First book is Bright Young Women. I read this summer, but I feel like because it's a mystery thriller vibe that it would be really great for fall. It's a fictionalized retelling of the Ted Bundy murders from the perspective of the girl who was a survivor from the last murders that he committed. So it starts like right that night and then it goes into like the aftermath of it and the trial experience. And I thought it was very well done, kept me on the edge of my seat, and it was spooky but not in like an unreadable way for me. I get skeeved out pretty easily, so it was good for me. So I would definitely recommend reading that if you're into like mystery thriller. Another mystery thriller that I read this year that I loved is called None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell, and this one was very unput-downable. Like, I sat in this bed, read the last half of the book in one sitting. I could not stop reading. The chapters were really short. I was just like wanted to keep going to find out what happened next. And the way that it was told was very interesting, like very creative storytelling in my opinion. The next book that I don't have with me is called Black Cake. This is sort of mystery, not really thriller, more like family mystery perhaps. This woman dies and her two children are trying to figure out who their mom was, what's going on, something that was left in like the will. The next books that I'm going to recommend is the Six of Crows duology. If you have not read these yet, you must. And I know that a lot of people say you have to read Shadow and Bone first, whatever. You do not. The Shadow and Bone trilogy, it's good to read first, like fun things connect in these books, but you will absolutely not be missing out if you don't read the Shadow and Bone books. Probably the only other benefit is that you kind of get introduced to the world in the Shadow and Bone books and you already know what's going on going into these books. That's how I read them, but you could totally read these by themselves. The found family in here is amazing. The heist story is so fun and they're just phenomenal books. Really fun fantasy books. I will definitely be rereading these this fall. I read them a few years ago, so I would like to reread them, get back with these characters that I love so dearly. But that's a really fun fall fantasy. The next fall fantasy, which I feel like I have to recommend, is Throne of Glass. I only have the first book, but I really am recommending the whole series, especially at the end. I loved the beginning of these books, but Empire of Storms and Kingdom of Ash were so good, and Sarah J. Maas just does such an incredible job connecting the plot from this book all the way till the last book, and I had such a fun time reading these this summer. It was so good. Like, I wish that I had read them sooner, but at the same time I wish I wasn't done with them, because as soon as I finished I was like, I just miss the characters so much. The found family in this book is also incredible, and if you liked Throne of Glass, I would definitely recommend Six of Crows, and vice versa obviously, but if you're looking for that found family, fun characters to fall in love with, I would say read Six of Crows. The next book on here, which is also kind of fantasy, is Babel. This is one of, if not the best book that I read this year. It's a historical fantasy, loose fantasy about students in this program at Oxford where they are working on translation, but in translating they are creating magic, basically. The plot in this was so genius. The story was so smart. I really already want to reread it. There were so many things that I underlined that were just like so well written. It was a very well thought out book, and it left me at the end being like I just loved it so much. This book is so important to me. If you take anything out of this video, read Babel. It's so good, and it's so worth the 500 pages. And the audiobook is very good too, if you are an audiobook listener. Okay, moving into fiction. The next book I have to recommend is The Overstory. This is my partner's copy. My copy of this book I sent to my friend, but my copy is all tabbed and highlighted and underlined. This is a perfect book to read in the fall. It's all about the environment, but at the same time it's about the people that live there and the people that the story is about. It starts out with a bunch of short stories, and then the second half of the book they all like weave, their lives all weave together. It's so atmospheric, which is why it's so perfect for fall, I think, and the characters are so great. But just the writing in this book is so incredible. And because I love this book so much, I also decided to pick up earlier this year Bewilderment by Richard Powers, which I loved almost as much. This is a beautiful story about a father and a son who've lost their wife slash mother respectively. Another just like phenomenally written book, heartbreaking story, but beautifully written. It was so good. If you're interested in reading Richard Powers, but you want something a little bit shorter than The Overstory, I would definitely recommend this one, but it is sad, so don't think this is a happy book. The next author that I have to recommend to you, some of my favorite books ever, is Caleb Azuma Nelson. Open Water and Small Worlds. Writing in these books is so buttery. The characters are so good. This is a copy that I bought so I could reread it and underline and tab it, just like I did for this book. And this is just such a good, I just don't know how to, you have to read these books. Caleb Azuma Nelson is such a talented author. I wish that there were more books out by him, but he's a newer author, so unfortunately this is all I got. But would definitely recommend them, and as you can see, they're pretty short books, so if you want a little weekend read, pick up one of these books. The last two books I have to recommend you by another one of my favorite authors are Homegoing and Transcendent Kingdom by Yaa Gyasi. I love this book. This is like easily top 10 books for me of all time. This is such a cool family tree story. It spans like multiple centuries. This is just like a portrait of life sort of story, as is this one. This is historical fiction and this one is literary fiction. This one is about a girl who's going through a PhD program and dealing with a lot of family history and trauma and working through that. This one is also about family, but through time. These are just both so good. She's a really good author, so would definitely recommend these two books. Okay, I'm gonna just run through these books pretty quickly. First one is Somewhere Beyond the Sea, which is the second book in the House in the Cerulean Sea series. I don't know if it's only gonna be a duology. I think it's just like the sequel. This comes out in like a few days now. I'm super excited for this. Hopefully my library hold comes in quickly. But that's just one of my favorite books ever, and I'm very excited to read the next one. I probably will reread The House in the Cerulean Sea before I get to this one too. Next on this list I have The Women by Kristen Hanna. I have a couple other Kristen Hanna books on here too, but The Women is her newest book, so waiting on my library hold for that one as well. But one of my best friends texted me the other day and said that I should drop everything and read The Women, so when I get my library hold, that's what I'll be doing. But the next book that's coming out this month is Playground by Richard Powers. I think that comes out in the middle of September. I don't really know what it's about, but there's a manta ray on the cover, so, and I will read anything by Richard Powers. Another book that I have on my list that I have just been eyeing every time I go to the bookstore is called The Bright Sword. It's a retelling of King Arthur, and it has a lot of characters that break the bounds of the King Arthur story, which sounds so interesting. And I listened to the New York Times book review podcast about this, and it really made me want to read it. So a couple thrillers I have on here. Then She Was Gone by Lisa Jewell. I read a couple of her thrillers and I really enjoyed them. I also want to read the second book in the Family Upstairs series, whatever. I don't remember what it's called, but I'll put it right up here. I read the first one last month, and so I want to read the next one. The other mystery that I have on this list is Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. Mystery thriller set in Vermont, so I feel like it's perfect to read in the fall in Vermont. The rest of the books I have here next to me. So while we're talking about mystery thrillers, let me just go through this stack. First, I have, these are so silly and I feel like they will be perfect to read in November around the election season. This is called Hope Never Dies and Hope Rides Again, and they are an Obama-Biden mystery duology. There's also one written about Bernie Sanders, but Obama and Biden solving mysteries together. How fun and silly is that? Next I have Once There Were Wolves. I've had this book for a while, but based on the cover, I feel like it would be a good book to read during fall. That's pretty much the only reason I put it on this list. And then I have Billy Summers by Stephen King. I have never read Stephen King. He's from Maine. I actually went to middle school with his grandsons, which is a silly fun fact. Yeah, I have heard a lot of things about this one. I feel like this is his most popular book on the internet right now. I love reading mysteries in the fall time. I feel like there's no bad time to read a mystery, but like fall little spooky mystery, like I'm very excited for this season. Next, let's do like fantasy. First one is Brandon Sanderson's Mistborn, and then if I like this, the other two books in this first Mistborn trilogy. This is what everybody recommends to get into Brandon Sanderson. So, hopefully I like this, because I feel like it'd be fun to get into like a big world where like there are lots of books. You already know what's going on when you read the book. So the next book I have is another TJ Klune book, In the Lives of Puppets. Beautiful Barnes & Noble exclusive edition of it. This is one of his newest books. Very sci-fi, I've heard. I think it's about robots in a forest maybe. But I love TJ Klune. I think he's such a great author. The next series I have on my list is the Poppy War trilogy by R.F. Kuang, who wrote Babel. These are the books by her that I have not read yet, and I have been recommended these to me so many times. And I think they will be really fun for the fall time to get into like a little fantasy series. Going off of that, I'll show some sci-fi books I have on the list. The first one is The Martian by Andy Weir. I've never really read any space books, but I love space movies, so I think I will enjoy this book. And then I have The Underground Railroad, which is like historical fiction and sci-fi. This book has been on my list for a long time, and I've read another book by Colton Whitehead, which I really enjoyed, so I think that I will really enjoy this one. The only nonfiction book I have on this list is Killers of the Flower Moon by David Grann. I read The Wager earlier this year. Phenomenal. Such a good book. So good at storytelling, like in a narrative way that makes it fun to read nonfiction. So I think this one will be really interesting. Important history to learn about, and then I will watch the movie as well since that won an Oscar. Another fantasy series that I missed is One Dark Window and Two Twisted Crowns by Rachel Gillig. I've heard that these are really fun. I think I'll enjoy them. Next, let's go through historical fiction because I have a lot of that. First, I have The Book of Unknown Americans. This is a story about family going from Mexico to the US. This book is A Thousand Splendid Suns. I don't know what this is about, to be honest, but one of my best friends said this is her favorite book ever. So I have to read it. And The Kite Runner I read earlier this year, which was really good. Next I have my other Kristen Hanna books, The Nightingale and Firefly Lane. I guess Firefly Lane is a little bit more like lit fiction. This one's definitely historical fiction. It's time for me to read Kristen Hanna. Like, it's ridiculous that I haven't yet. Next I have The Rose Code by Kate Quinn. I have heard nothing but fantastic things about this book, and I really just love historical fiction. I haven't really read as much of it recently, so I'm excited to get into some more historical fiction this fall, hopefully. And I have A Gentleman in Moscow by Amor Towles. This is one of my mom's favorite books. He's another beloved historical fiction author that I have not read anything from, so I figured that I should start with one of his earlier books. And then I have Lincoln in the Bardo by George Saunders, which is a story about Lincoln. But it's told in a very interesting style. There's like a bunch of small paragraph text. So I am curious to see what that book will be like reading. Okay, last one is like books that I couldn't really find a category for. The first one is Beloved. I guess this one would be historical fiction. This is a classic that I have not read. I've never read any Toni Morrison, so important author that I should have read by this point, but will by the end of the fall. Next is Outline by Rachel Cusk. I have heard some people online recommend this. It's such a beautiful book, and I'm always looking for books with really pretty writing, so I'm hoping that's what this will be for me. And then I have A Visit from the Goon Squad, which is about a rock band. It sounds fun. That's all I got. Then I have the library book, which could be nonfiction or fiction. still unsure, but it's about a library that burnt down and the mystery behind it, what happened, why did it burn down, who burnt it down, all that stuff. And then finally, the last two books I have on my fall TBR are The Goldfinch and The Secret History. It's very important that I read this book this fall. I think it's even set in Vermont. Elite New England college. So that is all. Thank you for watching all the way till the end of this video. Comment down below some books that you have on your fall TBR. I am so excited about reading for the fall. There are wonderful reasons for reading in every single season. I just love to read. But the fall time is really fun because it's so cozy and you can just curl up on the couch with like a little apple cider and some popcorn and read your book. What is better than that? I will see you guys in my next video. Bye, friends.